Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today on this Reactor session. My name is Hesham, and I'm the lead for the Microsoft Reactor in the Middle East and Africa. And at the Reactors, we are hubs for the founders and developers to come learn all about what's happening in tech, connect with the local community, connect with experts from Microsoft, from the MVP community, from the open source community, and again, work on interesting projects and grow their technical knowledge. On today's session, we are coming to you with an interesting topic. We're going to talk all about cybersecurity trends and how we can mitigate and use the best practices in cybersecurity. And we are glad to have Hesham Saad, who is a senior regional cybersecurity technical lead at Microsoft, who's going to talk more to us today and show us all his insights from the field. Hesham is a part of the global cybersecurity defense team unit, and he's focusing on the SOC operations, threat management, DFIR, defense analytics, SIEM management, with more than 15 years of experience in IT and cyber security experience in a multinational cybersecurity speaker. We're so glad to have you, Hesham, here with us.
Thanks, Hesham.
All right. And for everyone who's joining us today on this stream, this is a live stream. We're taking questions. You can interact with us in the chat, and we'll get to your questions as we go through today's topic. Keep this environment friendly for all and keep the questions specific to today's topic. I don't want to take more from this for the introduction. I would like to hand over to Hesham to walk us through all what's happening in the latest in cybersecurity.
Thanks, Hesham. All right, so just want to make sure if I'm audible, if everyone is able to hear me and see my screen.
Yes, Hesham, all good. We can start today's session. Yeah.
Thanks again, Hesham. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening from whenever you are. Thanks for joining us. It's an absolute pleasure and honor being here with all of you in Reactor. We all know that cybersecurity is a journey, and one of the key pillars to mitigate against sophisticated attacks, advanced threats, is guess what? The main human operator factor in terms of by awareness, guidance, visibility, trainings, running simulations for your organizations in order to be aware about such kind of an attacks and threats. Today, we'll share with you the latest and top cybersecurity trends in 2022. And but most importantly, how to defend with the latest research, insights, and advanced security analytics platforms. So let's get started. But before we go into details and sharing these latest cybersecurity trends and how to mitigate against all of these, it's really important to highlight that unfortunately still some key organizations usually build their own defenses with the screen of the lines that you're seeing. It's what's calling the silo defense. But on the other side, attackers and bad guys, they are thinking in graphs. And that's why most of the key advanced security solutions and workloads in the market probably they might adapt to some platforms, frameworks, or techniques like MITRE or MITRE attacks and others, which is really important to understand about the graphs and about the connected kill chain. And that's why we usually say that defenders they are think in lists or silos. On the contrary, on the other side, attackers, bad guys think in graphs, which means that probably such kind of an attacks are crossing the modalities, which is might be challenging for organizations, for individuals in order to proactively detect and actually try to mitigate and prevent such kind of a threats. So here is just a kind of an example about a kill chain. And by the way, that's a real kind of ransomware attack and a campaign that was running. And it was really vital and hurting different industries across the globe. So what you're seeing now is based on a MITRE kind of techniques and tactics, looking from a delivery stage to execution, going to evasion, and then doing reconnaissance on the network side, doing a persistence in order to having a solid footprint inside the victim network, doing a kind of a C2 initial command and control communications by leaking, establishing a connection to the attacker command center, and then starting to doing some activities based on an exploit, based on a dropping payloads, ransomwares, doing exfiltrations, lateral movements, and impact. So what you're seeing is, imagine that an attackers, which is they are thinking into kind of a silos or even a kind of more into kind of a graph by targeting different set of an assets. Delivery by dropping a phishing email, so they are targeting your email security gateway, and then starting to propagate and spread across the victim devices or host, targeting endpoints. Moving from a one machine to another machine required getting a privileged identity, to doing listening, reconnaissance, and establishing and dropping a payloads or a communication. And then moving from an endpoints to identity attacks or a compromise, going to the network, lateral movement across the network, starting to establish a communication to the outside of the ZNet to a public IP, and then doing the kind of an exploit activities. So attackers are crossing modalities, which is probably might be challenging if we do not have a modernizing SOC operations as an organizations, as a defenders, in order to early detect and connect the signals and the dots across multiple workloads, resources in our organization, in our environment and infrastructure network, and be able to respond using a native SOAR playbooks capabilities. So we must, as the defenders, address such kind of a challenges. And if I'd like to summarize the key challenges based on the case of the modalities and the challenge that I just showed to you, one is moving from the multiples to singletons, which is pretty much probably you might having the best in the market of breed solution for your email gateway, for your endpoint in terms of an EBPs, EDR. Probably have another one for your domain controllers, Active Directory, your identity protections layer from a UBA, behavior analytics. Probably having a CASB solution for your cloud applications, sanctioned and unsanctioned, and cloud network discoveries. You're probably having another advanced solutions from a SOAR by building custom playbooks and automation. The concept of having different workloads, multiple kind of components, and then probably think of I might have a SIEM or a data lake that probably aggregating and ingest all of these logs and start to correlate them. That's not fit enough or the proper way. And instead of having a single kind of a platform that do understand the signals, the correlations, the update across all of these assets or resources, and immediately having a native capability to respond and to remediate and even allow us as a defenders or a SOC to create a custom playbooks and runbooks. And then to address such kind of a challenges, uh, probably having different set of an alerts or an alarms that might be triggered and generated by all of these different best of breed solutions. Instead of moving to the concept of an alert to a consolidated incident, which is aggregate and correlate alert one or more into a single incident and make it easy for the SOC analyst to understand the exact root cause and to doing a proper analysis and forensics investigations, and probably the right action that's required in order to stop a breach or an incident or a malicious activities happening in our organization. And then last but not least, having the automation and the coverage, not only from a pre-breach perspective, from an early detections, analysis, and hunting, but most importantly as well, having and addressing the challenge if something might bypass all of my security defense layer and end up by having a kind of a breach or an incident. And it's really important to act as a post breach or post intent capabilities, from further automated investigation as an ERS, automated IR capabilities, going to fall into investigate, remediate, and respond to such kind of an incident. That was a quick set of an overview about sharing the challenges that probably we're seeing and how having a modernizing SOC operations can help you to address these challenges to avoid ending up by being a victim or having a breach in your organization. But let's jump back and go to the main key cybersecurity trends and what we're seeing in 2022. But before going to the details and sharing with you all of these trends, it's really important to understand the threat landscape now. So what we're seeing as a Microsoft is more than an increase of 130% increase in organizations worldwide. They are being encountered by a ransomware. And then on the coming slides, we'll show you one of still the trends going on by the HUMOR or the human operated ransomware, comparing to the commodity model and how it works, the kill chain, the evolution of it, and how it's impacting big organizations worldwide. And most importantly, how to mitigate the best practice remediation capabilities. We're seeing that even some big public ransoms has been paid, unfortunately, by organization, which is something really sad to seeing organizations probably might be impacted by ransom, going back to the attackers and paying the ransom in order to get the encryption key. But the question is, do you can guarantee that these attackers might not having another payload or a backdoor and later on they come back to doing an exploit or another ransom or encryptions by any case and come back to you and asking for another ransom? No guarantee. Identity attacks, targeting identities by credentials compromise, harvesting, pass hash, pass tickets, LDAM dumping, different techniques. 83 million identity attacks we're seeing recently, and 70%, which is actually increase from the last calendar year. And the median time that we're actually seeing that's an attacker starting to propagate and move laterally inside an organization victim network from a single device to compromise to entire network is almost an hour and 42 minutes. That's a full propagation spread across the network for the victim organization. And last but not least, in terms of statistics as a threat landscape that we're seeing now, that the financial impact, about $6 trillion financial cybersecurity is being estimated an impact, which is actually projected and estimated to reach up to $10 trillion by 2025. We don't want to scare you. We love to share facts, statistics, figures, and numbers of something that we're seeing in terms of the threat landscape nowadays. So if we go to the next screen before sharing these cybersecurity trends, it's really important to highlight an important topic. Imagine 98% of what we have seen in last 2022, the calendar year, if organizations starting to apply the basic security baseline and hygiene by applying MFA multi-factor authentication, by actually having the assume breach or zero trusted principles, by having the latest or the up-to-date kind of an anti-malware on an EDR from a post-breach perspective and prevention for their endpoints, regardless which kind of a device, clients, servers, Windows, XPlat, Mac, Linux, or even mobiles or tablets, by having the protections across the data, by keeping the backups, the dates, the patching, and protect the information with information rights labeling and data classification. These are the basic security baseline and hygiene. Imagine these 5 basics baseline you're seeing on the right side of my slide. can actually save approximately 98% of organizations worldwide. Imagine, simple kind of hygiene or resilience can help you to avoid the kind of a sophisticated attack or a threat or even a breach that might threaten and target your organization. So that's the time now to know more about the top cybersecurity trends. And at the end of our webinar, we're going to share with you a link that can help you to download it for free, a complete, detailed, and the latest MDDR Microsoft Digital Defense report. It's more than 100 plus detailed pages. And today we're going to summarize and share with you what are the top cybersecurity trends in 2022 that we released. Worth to mention that annually we are releasing a new volume on a chapter of this report to share with everyone what we're seeing, the best of practice, the guidance, the lesson learned, and the mitigations plan and recommendations in terms of principles to avoid being impacted by such kind of a security trends. If I start to look at about the top cybersecurity trends, we'll start with the cybercrime, and then we're going to move to the national state to know more about the ABTs, threat actors campaigns, that's what viral and going on in last calendar year. And most interestingly, we'll share more trend about devices and infrastructure, how attackers are actually abusing hardwares, OEM manufacturers, and infrastructure networks in order to spread their attack. We'll speak about the cyber influence operations, and last but not least, we'll speak about the cyber resilience. So let's get started and take it one by one. If we start about the state of cybercrime, which is mainly the cyber defense's proper and key critical role to improve and helping organizations to take a proactive models and frameworks and patterns based on approaches from a prevention to the attacks and specifically focusing on the techniques. So one of the main key cyber trends and the state of cybercrime category is still the extortion attacks and ransomware. We know that there are different types of ransomwares. The commodity and the most vital and active one and aggressive, which is a human operated ransomware, which is primarily not relying on a specific target workload or an attack vector like the commodity, by target only endpoint. That's an attack vector way targeting a device, dropping the payload, getting the privilege in order to execute it, and then once you executed your payload or malware, the ransom is start taking action. This action can be doing an encryption, and asking for ransom, can be disruptions, can be reuniting documents and organizations and data, and can be leaking information outside. So there are different forms and types of how the ransom and the extortion attacks can execute and exploit in the victim environment. But looking on the contrary, on the other side, the endpoint is not only the single source of an attack as a vector entry for executing and applying a ransomware extortion attack. And that's why going from the human operated, the typical human operated attack. So as you can see here on the left side, which is, we can highlight it, the human operated ransomware we're seeing at the Microsoft targeting rate successful model. We're seeing more than 2,500 organizations in 2022 are potential target organizations for human operated advanced ransomware. And more than 60 encounters activities that's being considered as a known ransomware attackers for organizations worldwide. More than 20 unfortunate organizations successfully being compromised, and a false victim to successfully having a ransom event. These informations and telemetry coming from our backend sources, intelligence, and from our XDR stack, extended detection and response. But what's interesting when we're going here is, let's get more insights from the frontline responders. So as you can see on the left side, there are different set of insights or frontline. One of the key points that an organization probably might be impacted by ransomware encounter is lack of information protection control. Some documents, some data, enterprise information they are using, there is no any kind of a data classification solution. They are not adopting any kind of a data labeling and information protection to avoid leaking this data. And guess what? For any case this data might be leaked, they don't have even the solution capability to track it and even to stop as a post leakage capabilities for such kind of confidential enterprise assets. What we're seeing as well in terms of the ransomware activities and insights is organization that using multi-factor authentication MFA, which is end up by compromising and harvesting identities, privileged identities, and the attackers probably using such kind of high privileged identity in order to doing reconnaissance and then doing a lateral movement across the network and spread their attack or ransom across the organization. And even establish a communication to command center CNC to public IPs for the attack. Another set of an insights we're seeing is mainly on the security configurations and policies based on a baseline settings configurations for the identity provider. Insufficient privileges from an access to lateral movement controls. There is no more into kind of adapting a security model or framework that do understand about the techniques, TTPs, about the malicious activities, and actually connecting based on a tactics or categories. And then looking into the security practice and the maturity related to the operations, what need to be done in the case of having a post-breach or a post-incidents, which exactly incidents that have a high fidelity or a severity and criticality that us as an analyst probably might need to prioritize based on KPIs that we need to take an action and triage. And then if we start to look at the right side of my screen, that our team from the DART team and incident response, the engagements that they already engaged last calendar year from stopping a breach, from stopping a ransom, and even doing the IR incident recovery, we're seeing on the right side, it's just a percentage of industries and segments of organization worldwide that our team helped them in order to stop doing a recovery, stop the bleeding and the movement lateral of the ransom, and even doing recoveries from an IR. And worth to mention that 93% of the recovery activities that Microsoft DART team for incident response team got engaged, because as a Microsoft, we're having a service as well by engaging a security consultant and engineers doing incident response recovery and getting the RT root cause analysis for what's happened and providing the mitigation plan and controls, and probably might be the tool with the team to help you to avoid having this ransomware incident again. 93% of the engagements from an IR recovery from a ransomware is because of insufficient security controls and privileged accessing end up by having spread across the network by lateral movement. And you can see the percentage in terms of the insights, the activities, and the controls that end up by having a ransom that we're seeing in 2022. All right, so another key trend that we're seeing under the cybercrime state is BECs, business email compromising or a phishing threat landscape. Is that one of the key kind of a top continuing cyber trends under the cybercrime state? If you look at the left side here, some statistics number, what we're seeing and what we help our organizations and customers worldwide to protect against such phishing. More than 710 million phishing emails that we blocked on a weekly basis in last 2022. And we mentioned about the median time to having an attacker doing a spread in the network from private by starting by a phishing email, almost an hour and 12 minutes. And then more than 531,000 unique phishing and malicious links and URLs has been actually been detecting and taken down by the Microsoft DCU Digital Crime Unit. And then if we're starting to look at the graph down, showing you some timelines from a phishing emails based on Ethereum, even a wallet. But most interesting if you look at the right side of my screen here on this donut chart, you'll see that most of the themes that's coming off a BEC business email compromise phishing emails in 2022, it's either because of a luring message, invoice frauding, BECs, impersonation happening for the brands of organizations or even specific users and profiles, BI business informations, and even scammings from phishing cards. Really important to have a solutions for your email security gateway. Not only understanding the on-premise your messaging server, either using Microsoft Exchange or others, and even integrating with the clouds as well, cloud messaging online like Office 365, Exchange Online, etc., from other vendors, and starting to having such kind of an advanced sandboxing behavior detection capabilities. Not only an email security gateway that's relying on signatures, repetition, heuristics, checks in terms of an IP users, and a specific set of commands or detection rules or transport rules or a flow rules, but most importantly, doing a sandboxing, behavior detections, anti-phishing and impersonation capabilities from a brands to users to high-value profiles or VIP assets by increasing the threshold or sensitivity, especially when we are passing as an organizations by a seasonal peak time of the year that we know that probably mean by the best time that attackers are running their campaigns or phishing to target organizations from a BEC perspective. And then before we end up by the state of cybercrime as a trends, which is we covered the ransomware, the human operator, we covered the phishing threat with the business email compromise. Last but not least here is still going on via the botnets. But most importantly, we love to share with you what we have learned and even as a Microsoft, and how it actually Microsoft can help with the digital crime unit team and cyber defense team, but looking into the kind of the timeline or actually looking into the stages by analyzing the botnet attack starting from the conflict botnet in 2008, going to Waldack and going to Rostak and then Tripod that was viral in 2019 and even still going on till this calendar year in January 2023 by having different variants, different kind of attack vectors under the frameworks model. So the whole idea is how to have a dedicated knowledge about understanding about the botnet attacks, and most importantly, how to be able to early detect and stopping before impacting the organizations or even the world. All right, so we covered the state of cybercrime, which is the first set of a theme or a categories of the top cybersecurity trends that we released for the latest report in 2022 Microsoft Digital Defense Report. The second interesting trends related to the national states, which is mainly about the ABTs, threat actors, campaigns, the outbreaks that we're seeing. As Microsoft, we are taking it more seriously based on a scientific and academic. So we usually name the national state that we are discovering based on our security researchers and R&D team based on a scientific periodic table elements. So as you can see, here is a sample of the national state actors and their activities that we have witnessed and see it in 2022. Targeting Russia, Lebanon, China's, North Korea, Iran, and other kind of states or countries or territories across the globe. And you can see that looking into the Nobelium that's targeting coming from Russia, which is the ABT29 code name, specific organization like IT, governments, think tanks, and education sectors. Going to the fancy bear, which is what we are referring to as a Strontium SR campaign, targeting governments, defense, and education as well. To the Callisto group, which is the Symposium, which is targeting defense, intelligence organizations, and segments worldwide. And then going to Erdium, which is known as the sandworm, kind of an ABT or a threat actor, which is mainly looking into critical infrastructure and abusing for devices, hardware, and manufacturing. and we're going to share more details. Going as well to the acronym, which is a Garmadron, which is mainly targeting specific governments based on a political states and wars, like the Ukrainian governments, militaries, and those. Going to the Promin, which is known as the energetic bear, which is mainly targeting energies, governments, airlines, aviations, and defense. Going to the Plunium, which is mainly target specific government organizations and defense. To Radium, to Vaccine Panda, to Soft Cell, to ABT40, to go to Eurospace, ABTs, etc., as you can see in my screen. So as a Microsoft, the Microsoft R&D and Research and Threat Intelligence Mystic team with Digital Crime Unit, we have a dedicated security researchers, engineers, and analysts to understand about the behaviors, to build the patterns, the models, the indicators, and understand about doing extensive research on the ABT's threat actors and behaviors that might target and hit organizations and our customers worldwide. And even going to show you more about the evolving that we saw in 2022 from the threat landscape. As you can see on the left side of my screen, specific industries and segments unfortunately has been targeted by national state actors. From communications to governments to transportation, health, airlines, aviations, government, media, NGOs, educations, and IT and healthcare. And then starting to look on the right side down here, showing you statistics graph about the national state targeting of critical infrastructure and how it's massively increasing in security comparing to the last calendar year as well. That's a massive increase, which means more people is going on from as threat actors. You probably might be familiar with that there are in the dark web, there are specific kind of ways that even attackers might not need to build something from a scratch or a 0 day. They are actually can having a kind of a service. It can be called as a SaaS, criminal as a service. It can be having phishing, pass as a service, ransomware as a service, called stands for RAS. So the SaaS, which is a criminal as a service, it's a viral set of activities in the dark web that some organizations is actually understanding even the behavior and even allowing the attackers in a way that to input specific kind of a security controls that probably might be using by specific vendors organization worldwide. And then these kind of a dark web or service, they are actually simulating or creating the phishing, the campaigns, the ABTs, the 0 days, the malware, call it whatever you want, or even a phishing. And then starting to ensure technically they probably might bypass the detections of the security controls, and then starting to offer this as a service toolkit to the attackers to be used for criminal activities. So the cybercrime as a service that's probably might having a toolkit service offering like a RAS, like a phishing, etc. This is something is viral and worth to mention. And that's something that Microsoft team is aware of from research about what's going on there. And then look at the rabbits in terms of the vulnerability exploiting. Still one of the national states, not only for the threat actors, for the ABT's campaigns and outbreaks, but most importantly about how the vulnerabilities and exploiting a vulnerability, it's actually being rapid and moving aggressively. Look at the charts, going from just the vulnerabilities that's probably might be publicly disclosed based on a CVE's KP patch update, and there is a patch has been released, the time that usually you're seeing some organizations probably might use in order to patch it or even to scan it. That's a scary number and might end up by increasing your exposure score, which is end up by increasing the risk factor and end up by having a kind of an alerts based on exploiting your organization. And then going to showing more statistics and numbers that we have seen in 2022. Made specifically on the Russian state actors for the wartime, threatening the Ukraine one. So look at how many kind of an industries or segments that target organization industries in Ukraine since the invasion. From to energy, to media, to transportations, communications, retails, nuclear, governments, financial, FSI, etc. And then what's interesting is going to another kind of in national states ABT threat actors campaign, for the China expanding the global targeting competitive edge. Look at just high level, and if you like again to get more details about the impact information, the affiliates groups, the countries, you can refer to the Microsoft Digital Defense Report for 2022, the latest volume, and we'll show you the link at the end in order to get more details, download the report, and get more information. So worth to mention that the Microsoft disrupted the naked operations, which is mainly targeting NGOs, governments, diplomatic interests, and here's just a sample of countries and territories this probably might be targeting for such kind of a campaign. And the nickel showing its really persistence in 2022 and actually being recompromised set of activities and governments agents across the globe. All right. And then one more thing in terms of the national state is about the Iran going mainly aggressively in terms of the power transition. If you look at the right side and showing you the critical infrastructure, which is mainly Iranian targeting specific countries, and this is just a kind of a sample. You can see it here on the screen, and you can get more details from the report. That from a state to Israel, UAE, Saudi, to others, United Kingdom, UK. The key kind of national states here for such kind of a threat actors on campaigns is mainly targeting the critical infrastructures. And a percentage of the non-one is about like 61%, which is massive. So expanding the ransomware attacks, not only beyond the adversaries to the victims, and then starting to threat organizations and governments by critical infrastructures that mounted in the last 2022. And then going to the next one, which is another kind of the trends based on the ABTs, national states, mainly with the North Korean cyber capabilities that's being employed. And the target set of countries that you're seeing here is an example on the right side. So cyber activities being run by the North Korean state actors. It's mainly stated the key priorities. One, how we can build the defense capabilities, bolster across a struggling economy for the countries, and the domestic capabilities insurance as well. And targeting different kind of campaigns and ABTs from Eurospace to Kunai to Lazarus, and even from ABT Series 8 and the Beagle Bullies. And then the trends of covering about the cybercrime state to the national threat actors, it's really important to highlight another kind of a cyber trends that we actually released and we said in the MDDR report 2022 about devices and infrastructure, which is something really interesting because we probably know that one of the key kind of trends that we used to have and still going on about the supply chain. But what's interesting is we're seeing kind of an attackers is actually abusing hardware infrastructures like routers, like gateways, and even switchers, network switchers, in order to spread their own attack, taking by compromising or a specific kind of a router or even a gateway. And then starting like the Miratech kind of one of the examples that we released is a Microsoft, a detailed research analysis and report. And then how many hundreds of thousands of organizations worldwide using such kind of a trusted router or a gateway. And then eventually, unfortunately, all of these might be kind of impacted or even might be compromised because the attackers starting to abuse such kind of hardwares or infrastructure devices in order to target their own kind of an attack or a kill chain. So one of the things that I would like to share with you as well, which is the enterprise of IoT and the OT operational state. A lot of organizations are probably adopting enterprise IoT assets or even an OT, and they are even believing that they're probably having an OT sites, plants, infrastructures. It can be different, can be retails, can be oil and gas, utilities, manufacturing, or even a kind of an FSI banking. They're using a set of different devices based on the segments, not necessarily to be in a production or a green segment. It can be on a brown field or a gray field. And then they believe they're secure. There is no any harm or any impact might happen These are completely air-gap, isolated network environments, or even a rogue assets or device, which is not going to touch our corporate network. But unfortunately, one of the key trends and attacks coming from the IoTs, enterprise IoT, or even the OT infrastructure, that attacks like targeting databases, ICS, web-based emails, remote access and management control, and unique security risks that we're seeing coming from these assets used as an entryway. So instead of a kind of an attacks that someone managed to compromise an IoT asset, even a smart TV or CCTV camera, which is probably might be in a network, different network, or completely unmanaged, or even a rogue asset. And this is like to compromise the organization Wi-Fi guest network, and then end up by going to the corporate device by laptop, mobile of the users or employees, and then end up by having an incident. So imagine monitoring and having visibility and telemetry into such kind of an assets, even if it's an unmanaged raw assets or even an air gap, and correlating the signals and telemetry with your corporate network is really important to understand the entire kill chain, and really important to have a wide visibility as an analyst or as a SOC. And that's how we can modernize the SOC operations in order to take a proactive actions and triage. And then showing again, one of the interesting kind of trend in the devices and infrastructures is related to the firmware vulnerabilities. 27% that we're seeing as a contained accounts with passwords being encoded with a weak algorithm. And then if we started to look down into the weaknesses of security controls from our firmware images analysis, that 27% is a weak passwords. 32%, 10 or more critical known vulnerabilities still do exist for organizations. 4% of X number of critical vulnerabilities targeting different ages or set of users, and dangerous, suspicious, malicious components. And 32% of the firmware images that's being analyzed contain at least up to 10 known critical vulnerabilities. That's a massive number. So the question is to these organizations probably might having, or anyone, why are keeping such kind of high severity critical vulnerabilities? I don't need to justify by business requirements. You need to doing hardening for the baseline. You need to apply like a kind of a patching plan to avoid having an alert or an alarm in your organization. And then going to another set of a trend that we have in the latest cybersecurity trends about the influence operations, which is really interesting because it's not something related to softwares. It's not something related to hardware abusing or infrastructure. It's not because of something related to a network infrastructure. It's actually something related to a set of tracking government's propagandas and indices. And here's an example showing you how Microsoft is helping building last year about a mature cyber threat intelligence infrastructure and platform to develop a broader and inclusive view of an influence operations, like the Russian false narrative around the propaganda bioweapons and biolabs in Ukraine. So that's an interesting and a new different set of variant of a cybersecurity trends that it's really important to organizations understand about the tracking of such kind of a propagandas and diseases as problem might happen, and how it might be like a kind of a real alarm to their organizations, and how to mitigate it and early detect such kind of influence on operations. And then showing you the synthetic mainly media landscapes, which is mainly showing the digital provenance, which is how it's really promising the emerging technology of having a potential help mainly to restore the trust of the people, organizations into the media content, and even certifying the origin of the media assets itself. So as you can see, the layer from factors to producers, to distribution, effects, and mitigations. And these are the different media landscape that we're seeing and actually seeing as a practice and learning in 2022. And then last but not least, we probably might be end up our webinar early and open discussions for any questions about the cyber resilience, which is really important, understanding the risk and actually the wars of modernizing become critical to the holistic approach. So let's start with the identity. As we said, still the identity attacks uh, is still going on, and key security resilience components that we're sharing based on a baseline, really important to have it configured in place to probably avoid such kind of an impact or an attack. If you look at my screen on the left side about the percentage and the aggressive number of users unfortunately being compromised by attack categories, we're seeing in 2022, that's a massive and scary numbers. Coming from a breach reply, from password spray, from a phishing, identity compromise, dumping LSAS, pass a hash, pass a ticket, different set of techniques or categories. And then look at the percentage of how many identities that's been detected based on a token reply attacks, up reaching to more than 70,000. And then about strong of authentication, few percentage, which is extremely low and sad to see such kind of strong authentications and protections happening worldwide. And then looking into the DDoS attacks, which is part from the cyber resilience, cyber trends, that look on the left side about the percentage of the DDoS attack durations in terms of how such kind of a DDoS might be distributed from a minute up to even going to more than hours, up to more than exceeding the 10 hours. And then about the destinations that are being seen and released on the latest MDDR report in 2022, just as a sample from some countries and subsidiaries that's being be targeting by DDoS attack. And still the game industry is continues to be the top target of the DDoS attacks worldwide. And to end up with the key recommendations, as we said about the cybersecurity trends and what we have been seeing as a Microsoft, is the cyber resilience. And the resilience build curve, which is you're seeing here again, please ensure that you have this security, hygiene, and a baseline control. The 5 you can see on my right side, from an MFA to zero trust, having a unified XDR and SIEM platform, probably might be even from a single vendor, to having the correlations, the aggregations, the signal sharings, and most important, the triage and respond with playbooks. The patching, the backup, the up-to-date information protections relating to your data leakage, identity, harvesting, and protection attacks. These are at least the 5 basic security controls and hygienes as a principles that probably might help you to protect against massive set of sophisticated 90% of an attacks. With that, it was to share with you all here that would like to get more details about the detailed Microsoft Digital Defense Report for 2022. Please visit https microsoft.com/mddr and check the latest 2022 version and download the PDF and get more details and insights and more tactics and techniques and analysis about all of the cyber trends that we summarized and shared with you today. If you'd like to get more deeper and getting more technical blog posts about these techniques, these trends, visit blogs.microsoft.com on the issues. And we highly recommend to follow different channels like the MSFT issues or Microsoft Security. With that, thanks so much for your time. We hope it was an interesting webinar sharing with you all about the latest cybersecurity trends that we have been seeing as a Microsoft in 2022, and sharing with you at least a clue about the security baseline, hygiene, the recommendation, the best practice. And again, remember, you can get more details by visiting the microsoft.com/mddr, download the report, be familiar with it, and see the mitigations plans and the principles that probably might help you to stop such kind of a trends or an attacks or an ABT's organization. With that, I think we'll open the floor for any questions. We are more than happy to answer or clarify.
Thank you, Hesham, for today's session. It was an insightful one. We received a few questions from the audience today on the live, and we still have a few more minutes also on our allocated live stream. So if more are coming, this is the right time to ask. So the first one came in was more about the beginner journey. If someone is interested to learn more, explore the different ways and start building their career into cybersecurity, what is your advice to someone in that position?
Thank you, Sam. It's a great question. So there are different tracks into cybersecurity and different roles. It can be like an analyst, like an engineer, like an architect, like an admin. So there are different type of roles in terms of the cybersecurity because it's a journey. It's not just someone or a person who know everything in terms of the cybersecurity in terms of information protection. There are some dedicated related to informations, operating system, hardwares, resilience, etc. So the starting point I highly recommend is visit learn.microsoft.com/security or microsoft.com/cybersecurity. We're more than happy to share the links as well again here in the chatting window. This will be probably starting page or starting guide that can help you to know more about what are the trends, what are the main different roles, what are the Rolex in terms of responsibilities, maybe with the cybersecurity team and even with organizations and defenders. This probably might be a good starting point for you.
Awesome. Another question came from Bill, which is basically more on the individual side. He's running a Windows 11 and he's curious about if there is a report and a way to find out all the block attacks on his computer per month over the last year. That will be something also insightful to learn as a user.
That's a great question. Thank you, Sama. Thank you, Bill, for asking. So I'm assuming since we're looking more into the enterprise organization because I'm part from the cybersecurity enterprise organizations. So for example, if you're using a Defender, which is, Defender, it's a big family. If you're using in your Windows 11, probably this might be your personal laptop or something. So you're using the free version coming of the Windows Defender, which is primarily focusing into the antivirus and anti-malware capabilities. Actually, there is a kind of, if you go to your settings, you'll be able to see there is a kind of a summarize about the advanced threats that has been detected in your computer, and then you will be able to export it. It's just showing you a list that you export. From a manageability point of view and enterprises, defenders can be managed by different kind of tools, like some called Microsoft Intune or Microsoft Endpoint Manager or System Center Configuration Manager. These are the supporting management tools by Microsoft that actually can help you to get more details, more information, more reports, not only about the detected stuff, but more into the security policies that you configured or enabled for Defender on your device.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much, Hesham. One more time, on behalf of everyone who joined us as members in the Reactor, and it was always an insightful session and a pleasure to have you at the Reactor with us. We look forward to hosting you again, and today was a very insightful one, learning all about the cybersecurity latest report, best practices, etc. And yeah, that has been great one more time. Thank you everyone for joining us today. It has been wonderful having you on this live stream. The session is recorded as all of our Reactor sessions, and it will be available right away on our YouTube channel for you to watch again, a review at your own time. Stay in touch and keep an eye on the calendar for more sessions that we are having across the Reactor. You can find more on the Reactor website where you can filter by topic or regions. So we have lots of learning opportunities for you coming up on a daily basis. That was pretty much all, and we see you in the next one. Goodbye.